Hi everyone, Brian Walker, CEO and founder of Retail Doctor Group, and welcome to our Future of Retail series, our podcast series, and always great to have such wonderful speakers, luminaries on the world of the future of retail, the future of consumerism. And those who remember the first session I had with Nikki Baird, who is VP Strategy and Product for Aptos, we had lots of requests to do the second session, and Nikki's beaming in from Denver. I'm in Sydney, such as technology. Welcome, Nikki.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you, Nikki. Well, Nikki, tell us a little bit about some of the things you're doing with Aptos around strategy, just broadly and around some of the key sort of headline topics for retail boards and executive to be thinking about, and how maybe that was picked up in the recent NRF in January 25.
Sure. So Aptos is an enterprise software provider. So we focus on the things in retail that are differentiating and hard. So the inventory management side of the house is always a challenge in retail, and getting all the right inventory to all the right places. And then the commerce side, but particularly in the store, right? The store is what makes retail hard. And so we provide point of sale, for example, as well as some omni-channel solutions, et cetera. So for me, a lot of my discussion in retail at the board level, at the executive level, is really focused on the role of the store going forward. So it's had some rough times in the recent past as we come up on 5 years since the pandemic, but I think there's a growing realization that younger generations, in some ways shaped by their pandemic experience, are really looking for the store to be a central part of their brand experience. So there's lots more discussion. Stores are under a lot of pressure, labor, wages, even customer bad behavior. That's a global phenomenon. So
Yeah,
how
totally.
do you make stores productive? How do you do more with fewer labor hours and fewer store associates? Because that's kind of the reality that retailers have to operate in. And how do you do that in a way that still delights and excites customers? That's a lot of the discussion that we have. And I would say it was a bit more at NRF as well, although thematically, like agents, agentic AI, that was everywhere. That was the topic at NRF. In some ways, a little frustrating, I think, because it's very early days. So it felt very shiny object, like I have to be on the next wave of AI, and I don't even know what that means yet, but I'm doing it, and it's kind of like that.
There's some great headline topics there. Maybe we'll unpack a couple. This topic about shops is interesting because, of course, we grew up pre-COVID, well, pre-internet, I suppose. Shop
Yes.
on every corner. We built scale and brand by having physical presence. But now, of course, we need to think more in terms of community, tribe, coverage. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of pressure now to think about store of the future, its role in terms of the essence of the emotional fulfillment of the brand, because inventory can be fulfilled now as a distribution logistics network. The store can be more store by sample, whatever it might be. What does that look like going forward? And how does a retailer who thinks, well, my business needs to turn over X amount of dollars, but I need to do this in a way with an omni-channel infrastructure, perhaps asked in a question, is the future of the physical retail store to have less as a sweeping comment?
I mean, I do see a trend towards smaller size stores and being more thoughtful about the inventory. Though I will say, Wall Street Journal recently made a big splash with an article that I think it's probably made all the rounds in retail at this point, about how store shopping is miserable. And it's miserable because retailers have taken too much inventory out of stores and made stores too small, so that the experience of going to a store becomes one of, oh no, we don't have that. You can't even try it on. You just need to order it online. And I think, I mean, I agree with the assessment that Retailers haven't necessarily been thoughtful about that. Like we've seen, because we can see among a basket of our retailers some omni-channel activities. So are they keeping more inventory in the e-commerce warehouse and just shipping it to customers? Are they putting more inventory in the store? And then are they doing pickup in store or ship from store to kind of put that safety valve on that inventory? And there's definitely been a pendulum shift just in the last couple of years, right? With the pandemic, they were trying to take as much inventory out of stores as possible. And then they were slowly moving inventory back in, and then they kind of pulled some back out again. So they haven't found the right balance. But the example I use, like I live in Colorado. Colorado, it's winter right now, and we just had snow earlier this week. And for a consumer who runs and wants to run outside, like every fall, I'm going to go to a local store to say, what kind of cold weather running shoes do you have? And this last fall, when I went, it was like, we don't have any of those. We're not carrying any, Gore-Tex shoes in our store. You just need to go shop online. And I was like, I'm trying to save you money because I can go order, 5 different pairs of shoes in 2 or 3 different sizes to figure out which one fits. But then I'm going to send all those back. And I'm not sure that's the experience you want. So
yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? If I take it to that next level of degree, if we talk about emerging technologies, we've had a look at the metaverse and it still exists. But the futurists would say that experience you've described with shoes could be supported by a visit to a metaverse. It could be in time to come a virtual in-house experience. And I do think one of the I know, but it's kind of interesting. And I think one of the trends that's emerging, albeit at the nascent stage, is this idea of the home as the physical shopping experience. That the technologies will evolve to the point where we'll be able to replicate or emulate a lot of that physical in-store experience. Now, I think we're right at the early stage of it. Do you accept that could happen? Or am I being a bit brave new world about it?
Maybe outside of fashion, but I still think fashion is dictated by fit. Like, yes, I could probably use my phone and augmented reality in order to say, oh, for this Solomon running shoe, you are a size 9, right? Like I could get at least some preliminary fit, but running and that has all kinds of things to do with my knees and my hips and my overall health. I want to feel what that feels like when I stand in that shoe or when I move in that shoe. And ultimately, anything that comes into my house, if I don't keep it, it's coming back out. And that immediately kills all of the gross margin. So I do, however, see like the smaller format store where a consumer makes an appointment and says, hey, I'm going to come in your store. I want cold weather running shoes. Here's my approximate size, but sometimes I run small, sometimes big. You stock that store for me, and I'll come in and I'll have a sales associate who will sell me the shoes, and whatever shoes I don't have, you already have built in a lower cost way of moving that inventory around without it having to go through parcel. So I see that kind of, it's almost a compromise on what you said. It's like not the home necessarily, but a smaller format very close to my home that's much more personalized experience.
And I think that is one of the directions this will definitely shape. Another direction I suspect, and interested in your view, of course, if Mr. Musk has his way, you or I will be in that shop and we'll be met by Optimus.
Yes.
And we'll have had some Sesame AI experience in advance of that will coordinate and online we'll have all our biometrics, supinate, pronate, gait, hip inflection, all that great stuff, right? Already mapped out, already well known, because we've only had to do that once in a physical environment. And then the Optimus sales assistant will greet us. Does that sound spooky?
Not spooky, but I mean, yes, I can see that future. Is that future in the next 5 years? Like, I don't, is it in the next 10? I don't know. But I do know that I'm very doubtful that that whole fulfilling an emotional need, creating a sense of community, not just connecting with a store associate, but connecting with other like-minded customers, that is not a possible outcome in that scenario. I think it locks you out of that.
And that's the really interesting piece around the power of brand, the technology and otherwise that will enable that to occur, the building of that tribe, and that the experience in store will be the personification of that tribe. You know, there'll be all the brand attributes and so forth. But what's interesting as well, of course, is that as shopping centres or malls house more and more retailers, or have done over the years, as their costs go up, as the rents go up, as staff costs go up, retailers will have to think about space in a very different way. And one of the ways I suspect they'll start to think about it in the future is, frankly, a lot of what we've already just talked about. And that there'll be an ecosystem available. Increasingly, we're at the Nancy stage of that too, that the physical environment, I want to talk to people because I'm social by instinct and I want to trust, will be available, but there'll be less of it, I suspect.
Yeah.
So in other words, that store could be manned by a couple of, dare I say, humans and a couple of
yes. Yeah, but I am with you from that perspective. Yeah, I mean, well, and you know, we've seen past attempts at more automating like the fitting room experience. Like, why shouldn't I, when I'm already trying on clothes, I should be able to sort of say like, hey, I need this different size. And does it really have to be a store associate who runs and gets that? Or, you know, Amazon experimented with vacuum tubes to deliver products to fitting rooms. Like, sure, you could potentially kind of marry that experience together. But I do think if you, I mean, I see resistance at the executive level in retail to consumers expect you to solve their loneliness problems. Like they expect you, retailer, they expect you, brand, to be their therapist, right? Retail therapy is a thing, and people have expectations that you're going to play a role there. And if you ignore that, I think that's where you're going to lose. And people is the heart of that experience. You can't get away from that.
And that leads me to sort of speculate about the future of big box retailing, where it's essentially, you know, a completely self-serve experience ultimately, because of staffing costs. Well, over here anyway, staffing costs and what have you.
Oh yeah.
And a fairly commoditized value proposition. So I wonder if there'll be a natural tiering in the future that basically the more sophisticated the product, for want of a better term, the more human interaction. The more commoditized, the more volume, technical aspects. We've talked about the online and so forth.
I also see a more portfolio approach. So in a particular city or metro area where you might have that one giant store that has everything. So if you want everything across all the categories, it's a destination as opposed to just conveniently located. But then you have these kind of more satellite stores that either serve specific functions or can be flexed to serve specific functions in specific times. So like home improvement is a good example where you might have one giant store that has absolutely everything. So if you want to see 30 refrigerators, you can go to this store and you can see 30 refrigerators. But if you're trying to design your kitchen, you just go to this satellite location where they send in a kitchen designer specifically to sit with you. They might have some samples and they might have some big screens with augmented reality or whatever, right? Like so that you have to segment your approach to the customer journey, and you have to design your stores to support different parts of that journey in different places and at different points of time.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's right. The other thing that comes to mind is when we go through this commoditization or democracy of technology, that it's only when it gets to certain points of cost is it available for all. And we're nowhere near that at the moment. You know, so those small businesses, medium-sized channels will really be challenged to capitalize to deliver that experience. that consumers will increasingly expect.
Yeah.
So there's that lovely inflection point of when is that timeline? Probably 5 years away, I guess, 10.
Yeah, I do. I mean, yes, I agree with that. I do think that Gen AI in this particular case has the opportunity to be a disruptor, and in a
Yes.
way that I don't think retailers are paying enough attention to. Like everybody's all about the I have a personalized shopping bot, right? You go to my website, you can talk to my bot, you can get, recommendations for products, it'll help you buy. Well, as this agentic AI develops, consumers can develop their own bots. Like some of that stuff is pretty accessible, and
Yeah.
you don't need a huge amount of technology skill set in order. In fact, the whole point is that you
Yeah.
don't need technology skill set in order to make some of these things work. And I do think retailers are not paying enough attention to how these solutions can be turned against them. If I, as a consumer, want just give me the best deal. I'm going to specify what I define as the best deal. I'm going to specify what I'm looking for in what I want. And you, shopping bot, you go out and negotiate the best deal across all of these retailers and bring it back to me and I'll buy it. And that commoditizes retailers very quickly because it does not matter your experience or the convenience or the design or like none of that matters. It only matters the price and the offer. That's it.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And it's just so you can see how this is all emerging and developing. One of the topics you also raised, which I thought was very interesting, was the topic of being at a conference and the conversation, as I experienced too, being all around artificial intelligence, large language models, and what have you. I have a little bit of a view that privately, well, we're generally upskilling. We're using the co-pilots and the chat GPTs of this world, but the enterprise solution is still a while away.
Mhm.
There's a gap. There's a
I
gap
agree.
between individual understanding and collective enterprise understanding. When that occurs, which is probably, I don't know, a year to 2 years away, maybe a bit longer, we will see enterprise using AI, retail enterprise, in a far more advanced way, I suspect. Do you think that will be the case, as it will be with other industries?
I do. I mean, I do, but I also, I don't know. I do have reservations. My reservations stem from, automating things that people don't want automated. Like in some cases, there's friction in the shopping experience, sometimes for good purpose. So I talk to retailers who don't want to get rid of the cash wrap. They don't want to get rid of the countertop and the till and the experience with the consumer because they feel like 90% of the relationship building between the store associate and the customer happens in that moment when the store associate is ringing things up, folding the items or wrapping them in the tissue paper and putting them in the beautiful bag, right? Like that's friction. You could make that very, automated, or you could remove that from the process, but now you're losing something essential. And I think at the enterprise level, like I know at my company, we have Copilot, everybody's encouraged to use it. We have like sort of a down low kind of network of how are you using Copilot? Well, this is how I'm using Copilot. And not necessarily a surfacing of that across. Like we're not sharing best practices at the enterprise level. We're sharing them at the my personal network level.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think that's where you're coming from. Like, yes, if we all sat down in a room together, maybe on Teams or whatever, and shared all the different ways that we were using that would inspire something at the enterprise level that would create a different value equation for it. But right now it's so low level. It's like, oh, did you know that when you record a meeting, you can go in afterwards and get
yeah.
Copilot to summarize it? Like that's the level that we're at so far today. So
And it does talk to retailer strategy ultimately, doesn't it? Into the future, this will be very, very commonplace. But if, for example, we're using AI to accelerate customer relationship management, the basic CRM networks, well, if every retailer does that, and if every retailer sends out homogenous, allegedly personal messages,
yeah.
doesn't it all just become noise at some stage? And then it gets me to the point of, is AI hype or substance for retail?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have my reservations. It's really hard to make that judgment today when nobody is paying the actual cost of what it takes to run this. Like even at $20 a month for Copilot in the US, that is in no way covering even the costs of delivering Copilot. So yes, it's valuable. Is it worth $20 a month? Sure. Is it worth $200 a month? Is it worth $2,000 a month, which might actually cover the cost of my personal use of Copilot?
Yes.
No, I don't know that it is worth that. And that's where it gets really tough. Like, yeah, if they can get the cost to come down so that we don't have to have this conversation, then I think that would open up a lot more things. And DeepSeek, right, has changed some of the math that goes into that calculation. But yeah, I think we have to keep both of those things in mind. It's like, yes, I do think that there's value, and I would be bummed out if I lost my access to Copilot today. But if you turned around and told me, if you have to pay 100 times more what you're paying today in order to keep it, sayonara, forget it. Goodbye.
Yeah. Well, Nikki, we've covered some wonderful topics, and I hope to see you in NRF, Asia Pacific, and perhaps it'll be warmer weather in June.
Yeah.
But that'd be fantastic. But Nikki, thank you very much. Wonderful to talk to you again. And
my pleasure.
Really great topics. And bear with me for one sec. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just saying farewell to Nikki. Wonderful session. Just if you do get a chance, come onto Nikki's LinkedIn site, Nikki Baird. Writes beautifully for Forbes, a great futurist and also a very practical pragmatist about retail, and always delightful. So thanks again, Nikki.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.